Good evening, everyone. Welcome to today's June 3rd. Yeah, June 3rd, Planning and Zoning Commission hearing. And let me find my script.
Mr. Chair, if we could start
If I start with what?
roll call, and then there's some
Okay.
opening remarks as well.
All right, Mr. Travis, roll call.
Here.
Here. Commissioner Commissioner Broyles, Commissioner Clayton.
Here.
Commissioner Depler. Commissioner Jackson.
Here.
Chair Beatty.
Here.
Vice Chair Cohn.
Here.
Councilmember Brost.
Here.
And Mayor Garitano.
Here.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Before you begin, Mr. Vunich, I'd like to welcome Mayor Garitano as the newest member of the commission, and naturally appreciate your presence here this evening.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Vunich.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, for the purposes of the meeting tonight, we do have one public hearing item on the agenda, one letter of recommendation, one item of new business which relates to a correspondence item, and then finally, there is one other item under miscellaneous, so to speak. So tonight we do have 4 items on the agenda, relatively light, but certainly all important to the city of Wildwood. And then, Mr. Chair, with your permission, we would request a motion to consider the minutes from our last meeting of May 6th.
We have a motion to approve this. We have a motion for Commissioner Helpfree. When we have a second. Okay. All in favor? This will be a voice vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
Thank you, David. All right, approved.
And Mr. Chair,
Yes,
with your permission, under the agenda, the department does have an opening remark tonight.
please, we'd love to hear your opening remarks this evening.
Well, the Department of Planning, that being Melanie, Travis, and I would also like to welcome Mayor Garitano to the Planning and Zoning Commission. He's been at a lot of commission meetings over the years, but I don't get to see him face to face. So welcome.
The next item, Mr. Chair, is the public comment session for anyone who wants to speak about any item that's not related to the public hearing item.
Okay, do we have any speaker cards, Mr. Newberry?
I have not received any speaker cards, but I was pretty busy before the meeting. So if anybody has a speaker card, would like to speak.
Public comment. I'm Richard Lusso. I'm actually the PZ 3-24.
Yeah, get through the public comment. Sorry, that's
Should I read my little script?
if no other individuals in attendance via Zoom or here in the city council chambers wants to speak, then the next item would be the public hearing, which would begin with the script.
Okay. All right, and the City of Wildwood public hearings are truly intended to accept comments and questions concerning these posted items. Since this request is being presented at a public hearing, no action is planned on it tonight, and consideration of the item is to be taken no earlier than July 2024 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. This approach ensures the members of the commission will hear all opinions before taking any action. The City Department of Planning will address the comments, questions, and concerns that are raised tonight and include them as part of its formal recommendation to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Anyone in attendance at City Hall tonight wanting to speak out should fill out a speaker's card and leave it with Mr. Newberry. Those in attendance via Zoom webinar platform should use the raise hand feature to indicate you wish to speak at this meeting. A team member will add you to the list of speakers, which will then be communicated to me as chair, and I'll invite you to speak when it is your turn. The public hearing process is outlined in the public hearing guidelines pamphlet, which can be found on the table at the entry level of the council chambers. The commission will allow all parties adequate time to present their position. As outlined in the public hearing guidelines pamphlet, speakers who are designated as a group speaker representing more than 5 individuals be allocated 5 minutes to speak. Those individuals representing themselves will be allocated 3 minutes to speak. In addition, information on items can be found on the city's website. The Commission would like to thank you for your cooperation and participation in tonight's meeting. Mr. Vunich, Mr. Newberry.
Mr. Chair, I'll read it into the record. PZ 3-24, City of Wildwood Planning and Zoning Commission, care of Department of Planning, 16860 Main Street, Wildwood, Missouri. Wildwood, Missouri, 63040. A request for the consideration of possible changes to chapter 415.030 definitions, chapter 200M1 industrial district regulations of the City of Wildwood's Code of Ordinances, which would consider allowing additional allowable use, more specifically self-storage facilities inclusive of recreational vehicles, boats, trailers, and similar items, such being within the portion of the city designated by its master plan as the industrial area of Wildwood, the Wildwood portion of the Chesterfield Valley, Ward 1.
Mr. Vunich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the Department of Planning has prepared for your consideration tonight a primer relating to this specific request. Again, as the request was just read into the record by Mr. Newberry, I will not go into detail, but there is a business that currently operates in the Chesterfield Valley, the Wildwood portion, that would like to offer the storage of recreational vehicles, boats, and trailers and similar equipment at that particular site. The department would note that as part of its primer, it does identify that in 1970 and 1971, the St. Louis County Council did a significant rezoning of almost all the properties in the Chesterfield Valley for the purposes of creating an industrial district. That industrial district would be anchored by the Spirit of St. Louis Airport and was intended to basically complement industrial uses, service uses, and those businesses that would complement that daytime population. Ultimately, in 1988, the city of Chesterfield incorporated, and then the majority of the Chesterfield Valley became part of the city of Chesterfield. After the 1993 flood, the trend, at least in the city of Chesterfield, seemed to change from, let's say, industrial uses to more retail and services. Many of those retail and service facilities are prominent now in that component of the valley that is under the jurisdiction of the city of Chesterfield. The Wildwood portion, for all intents and purposes, can be defined by Interstate 64, Highway 40 on the north, the Missouri River on the west, North Etherton Road on the east, and Centaur Road on the south. It's approximately 450 acres or so and includes a number of businesses. Those businesses, however, are truly industrial in nature. There's a batch plant, there's a farm storage location, there is Fence and Deck Depot, which is Mr. Lucia's business, who was about to speak during public participation, and several landscaping businesses as well. The city, when it incorporated, adopted the existing zoning of St. Louis County. That included the M3 Planned Industrial District for the Chesterfield Valley Wildwood portion. However, if you look at that particular ordinance, it speaks to the M1 Industrial District and the M2 Industrial District as potential uses for those properties. The city of Wildwood did not necessarily accept that, given that the M2 Industrial District is truly the heavy industrial district. When you think of factories and rendering plants and things that create items that people need, but certainly not in the Wildwood portion of the Chesterfield Valley, there was a decision to eliminate that particular zoning district designation from the zoning ordinance. So we have an M3 Planned Industrial District with a site-specific ordinance that now, for all intents and purposes, just allows M1 district industrial uses. That is important because what is being asked of this current business owner and before the Planning and Zoning Commission for its consideration is to allow an additional use into that M1 industrial district, and that would be the storage facilities for recreational vehicles, boats, trailers, and similar equipment. The property that is now Fence and Deck Depot cannot be used for this use because, again, the underlying regulations of the M1 Industrial District, its permitted and conditional uses, does not anticipate this type of use. Therefore, there is a need for the addition of the use and then ultimately the rezoning of the property from its current Fence and Deck Depot business to something akin to this storage facility. So there are multiple steps in the process, but again, before these subsequent steps can occur, the actual M1 Industrial District needs to be amended. And so tonight, that is the intent of the public hearing, and to accept comments in that regard, not only from the commission members, but anyone from the public that's in attendance tonight as well. If there are any questions regarding this particular matter, Mr. Young, Ms. Ripito, Mr. Brown, Mr. Newberry, and I are available to respond to them. Thank you.
Open for discussion. Any commission members have any questions, comments?
Joe, if we make this change, are there any other areas of M1 zoning within the city outside of the valley?
No, sir. There is a area that is part of Wildwood that has an industrial use. It's St. Louis County's maintenance garage for its vehicles. You see it when you're heading east on Route 100 toward Ellisville. That is an industrial use, but in our master plan, where we have the land use category industrial area, we actually identified that particular lot and said it's not justification to include an industrial designation there. And so, no. So yes, everything that would be industrial would be in the Chesterfield Valley Wildwood portion. It could, depending on the definition. And again, the department posted this particular public hearing with two items. The definitions section to ensure that if there is storage facilities of this nature, we define them appropriately and correctly, or within the confines of what may be reasonable or not reasonable. And so that's part of the discussion tonight. And good question. Thank you.
Oh,
Ms. Helper.
Mr. Beatty?
Yeah, is there any place else in the city or any other zoning classifications that allow the storage facilities like this?
Well, other than town center, the city of Wildwood is all residential under the master plan land use categories map, which is the
Right.
non-urban or the suburban. Town center doesn't accommodate industrial uses, but commercial types only. So yes, this is it.
Oh, so there's right now, as it stands right now, there's no storage facilities like this allowed in Wildwood.
There are none that are allowed. Now, I would reference county building and supply. They are a commercial zoning designation, a CA plan commercial district. They border on an industrial use, but that was St. Louis County. So again, anything that's industrial in nature, whether it pre-existed Wildwood or would be approved by Wildwood, has to occur in the Chesterfield Valley Wildwood portion.
Oh, and so you consider vehicle and essentially vehicle storage as industrial. Is that correct?
The current ordinance does. So again, remember, if you look at the M1 industrial district, it talks about contractor storage yards, it talks about light industry, it talks about airports, things along those lines. So the current configuration of the city's zoning ordinance and the M3 planned industrial district adopted by the county council back in 1970, 1971, they collectively identify the area as industrial. And now our master plan took that, for the most part, 25-year land use pattern and said, yeah, it is acceptable down there, given what we know about Spirit of St. Louis Airport, the end of runway, things like that.
Thanks. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, to me, like storing vehicles is a pretty light industrial use. I'm just surprised it wasn't already allowed.
Just remember, there's many functions to a permitted use. Some are how they absorb the land, use the land. And in some instances, it's the aesthetics. Is it something you want to see when you drive by? Obviously, we have Fixed Supply that's been a long time business in the Wildwood portion of the valley. And then we also recently approved Kurt's Nursery, another landscaping type business.
That's all I have. Thanks.
When this comes back in front of us, it sure would be nice if we had a map of the industrial area that showed us what is there and what's available. And then I just wanted to know if the gentleman wanted to speak.
And it is my intent that once the commission has completed their questions to sit down and let the podium be open to the public. And Ms. Ripito, our mapping expert, will be glad to provide that. And if she has the time, I'll probably get it out before our meeting in July so you can take a look at it. If you want to drive down to the area and kind of compare the map to what's there, you'll have that out. You'll have ample time. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Should we open this up to public, Mr. Navarez?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. The department received a speaker card from Mr. Lusa.
Good evening, everyone. Two clarifications. I own
Name and address, please.
Richard Lusa, 407 Foxlair Drive, St. Charles, Missouri.
Thank you.
Clarification. I owned Fence and Deck Depot, and I did own and I still own the building, but I sold the company 5 years ago. But it still operates as Fence and Deck Depot. The tenant has the opportunity to lease it for the first 5 years, which he did, and he has 5 more options for 3 additional years. He may or may not lease this property in the future, so I'm being proactive to see what I can do with it afterwards, if that were the case. And one of the things that would make sense would be a storage facility. That there's plenty of room for the property to generate enough revenue to sustain the property as a business, and there is no storage facilities in the city of Wildwood. And I think it would be a great opportunity to have something available for your residents there, because right now they're going somewhere else. So I'd be open to questions, any questions you all have about it.
Questions? Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Explain what you imagine you would be storing.
Okay. What I would imagine is that people would have boats and trailers, and maybe an old car that they don't have room for in their, like a classic car or something like that, that they don't have room for in their garage. So it's not sitting out on their driveway, which I don't think the city allows people to store things in their driveway anyway like that. So it's basically recreational vehicles, boats, trailers, campers, those types of things.
Large motor coaches, look like Greyhound buses.
Mhm. It would be a possibility that would be available if the city allows it. I don't really envision that. I think it's going to be more of the smaller, 30-foot, 10-foot high, 8-foot high trailers, campers.
Where I'm going with this is in reading document, you already have a 6-foot fence.
Correct.
A boat, camper and everything would probably be screened by fence. Motor coach, things like that. They 13 feet high.
More than likely, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I even think
the
boats would be taller. A lot of the boats, even though they don't look that big, but once you put them on a trailer, they can be taller. Yeah.
So I don't know if 6 foot is the right height, but
Mhm.
when you get to a motor coach or something like that, you definitely are exposing the
Most of the storage facilities that I see do not have 8-foot, 10-foot tall fences. They have 6-foot fences. It's primarily to keep people from coming in. Some site proof. Ours happens to be site proof, and we would maintain that.
I know that in the subdivision that I live in, at least 3, maybe 4 people in there have those big motor coaches.
Right.
And course, we allow them 48 hours because if they're going to someplace to use it, they have to bring it in and clean it, and
Sure.
store it, and stock it, and I have no problem with that. But if they're taking those down to Eureka, there's a storage lot down there.
Mhm.
They may want to get a place closer to home,
Correct.
and so I'm trying to lay the groundwork for what we might wind up with.
Well, but if you look at those are usually very beautiful, and if you see them, I don't think it would be an eyesore, in my opinion.
They may not,
Yeah.
one man's eyesore is
Right.
another man's Picasso, so
Yes.
that's all right.
Is it correct? This is going to be all open storage, nothing enclosed?
There
that
is
what you're
a
proposing?
2,500 square foot building back there behind the offices, and I would allow that to have, if somebody needs some things stored inside, I would allow that to be
I
inside.
said 2,500.
Square feet, yeah.
Okay.
It's not very big.
No, it's not.
Be limited use there.
Anyone else have any? Commissioner Helfrey?
So I guess one of the things I would ask is, were you planning on building other structures on your property? Would that be the idea? And then what about security?
There is no other structures that are allowed on that property besides what's there because of the floodplain and the under seepage berm that's there. All I can do is put vehicles or parking things in there. That's all I can put in there. So I can't build any other structures. And the second question, I'm sorry.
What would you do for security down there?
Okay. I think that we would just need to put some lighting up there. It would have a self-maintained access control system for the gate so that people can put an access code in to have an ingress, and then an automatic re-exit loop available so that if they had to leave, they would leave, and the gate would open and close.
Anyone else? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Chair, the department has not received any additional speaker cards and don't see any hands raised on Zoom.
Okay, so are we ready for?
Oh, Mr. Beatty just raised his hand.
Commissioner
Real
Dunn?
fast, the property in question, that's directly north of the Howell Island parking lot, correct?
I think there is an intervening property, but get that map out to you and then you can make those conclusions. I thought we had provided. Yes, you're correct. It is adjoining the Howell Island MDC, Missouri Department of Conservation property.
Okay, thank you. I have had it up on Google Earth. I just wanted to verify what I was seeing.
You are
Thanks.
correct, sir.
Mr. Newberry, are you ready for PZ 2-24?
Mr. Chair, if we could, if the commission is agreeable to a motion to close the public hearing, the voice vote.
Is there a motion? Motion by Commissioner Helfrey. Second. Got a motion in a second.
And that's a voice vote, Mr. Chair.
And a voice, quick, please. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Mr. Newberry, PZ 2-24.
PZ 2-24, City of Wildwood, Planning and Zoning Commission, care of Department of Planning, 16860 Main Street, Wildwood, Missouri, 63040. A request for a change in zoning regarding attractive land that is 6 acres in size, which is located on the south side of Crestview Drive at the current terminus of Main Street. Street address is 16904 and 16916 Crestview Drive. St. Louis County locator numbers 23V220013 and 23V220123. That is currently designated the NU Non-Urban Residence District, Town Center Cultural Institutional District, to the PS Park and Scenic District. The property is the future location of the city's Village Green, a master planned park and event space owned by the city of Wildwood. Construction of phase 1 of this park is planned to begin in spring 2024, Ward 8.
Mr. Village.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the department has prepared for your consideration tonight the draft letter of recommendation regarding the request that Mr. Newberry just read into tonight's record. As you know, in 2018, the city of Wildwood purchased 2 3-acre lots abutting the current city hall site with the intent to create a town center park. The park became Village Green after a lengthy and robust public input session that was held during COVID-19. Ultimately, Phase 1 was authorized by City Council, and as you can see, if you drive into City Hall, work has begun on Phase 1 of Village Green. As part of that process, the Department of Planning petitioned the Planning and Zoning Commission to hold a hearing and consider changing the zoning of the 6-acre tract of land from NU non-urban resident district to Park and Scenic District, given it is now a park property of the city of Wildwood. The Planning and Zoning Commissions considered the department's recommendation in this regard at its May 6th meeting and ultimately unanimously approved the recommendation to change the zoning to Park and Scenic. Tonight, that action is in final form for the commission's consideration. If the vote is favorable, this matter will proceed to City Council for its consideration and action as well. If there are any questions, the Department of Planning and Parks, as well as our city attorney, are available to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for the department? Anyone? Any Commissioner Helfrey?
I'll make a motion to approve the recommendation.
We've got a second. I guess that would, any discussion?
Oh, I'll make a
Commissioner
motion.
Clayton, I'm sorry.
I wanted to make a
What?
second.
Oh, you second, well, and we got third. Okay. Have a discussion? Or we just try to a roll call vote?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Newberry?
Commissioner Rubus,
Aye.
Commissioner Clayton,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson votes yes. Commissioner Helfrey,
Yes.
Commissioner Beatty,
Yes.
Vice Chair Cohn,
Yes.
and Councilmember Brost,
Yes.
and Mayor Garitano. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, with your permission, if you're wondering the status of construction, we're waiting on a final permit from the Missouri Department of Natural Resources. Once we have that in hand, we will be able to proceed forward at full speed. The state of Missouri has had the application for that permit since April 24th, and we are waiting patiently. Thank you.
Mr. Newberry? We got another item.
Yep. The next item. A response to a communication from Daniel Deal, West County Feed and Supply Store, which is dated May 14, 2024, regarding PZ 118-92, St. Louis Nursery Partnership, West County Feed and Supply Store, C8 Planned Commercial District, Town Center Workplace District, street address 2603 West Avenue, St. Louis County, locator number 24V420175, which provides a recommendation on requested modifications to the existing site-specific governing ordinance to allow the permitted uses authorized by it to include a microbrewery and restaurant with accessory structures and activities typically a part of such land uses. Ward 8.
Mr. Vujicic?
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the department has prepared for your consideration tonight a report with recommendation regarding the potential change in use of a longstanding town center business. That business is West County Feed and Supply. In the report that's been prepared for tonight and your consideration as the commission, the department noted that in 1989, the St. Louis County Council approved a CA planned commercial district for this approximately 3-acre property. And that particular site-specific ordinance authorized a retail lawn and garden center. In 1993, the St. Louis County Council then added as a set of permitted uses the feed supply component. And so since approximately 1993, now almost 30 plus years ago, this particular business has been offering a variety of items to not only our suburban population, but our rural residents as well. More recently, within the last few months, Good News Brewing Company approached the city about potentially using this site for a microbrewery and associated sit-down restaurant. Certainly, it was with some sadness that the feed supply business might go away, but certainly if you follow any of our surveys of residents and other items that we've done as part of our planning processes and our economic development committee, a microbrewery and sit-down restaurant are always high in terms of support among our residents for our town center business community. As the discussion proceeded forward, the potential new user, owner of the property, Good News Brewing Company, identified that they have 4 locations in St. Charles County. And those 4 locations operate consistently across the board in terms of days and hours of operations and offerings in terms of food, drink, and then the activities associated with the facility as well. The consideration of that history or that current operational status was important in the department's consideration of the request. The department is recommending that the list of permitted uses within that site-specific ordinance be amended to continue to allow the existing activity, which has been there, as I mentioned, for over 30 years, but also to include as a permitted use now the microbrewery and associated sit-down restaurant. So it's important to note from the department's perspective that if changes are made and something were to go awry and the microbrewery and associated sit-down restaurant were not to occur, the current business could stay as is with no new imposition of any condition. All of the conditions that are identified in the recommendation report for you tonight, those conditions would be only applicable if Good News Brewing Company became the owner of property. So the fail-safe here is keeping the business that's been there for 30 years if something doesn't work out. But certainly if the owner of the property deal and the petitioner, in this case, Good News Brewing Company, do work out a solution and ultimately the purchase is made, then the new conditions that are identified would be applicable. The department would note that a number of conversations have been held internally, plus with the petitioner, in this case, Good News Brewing Company, about some potential issues with this type of use. This use isn't necessarily as quiet as the retail operation that is at the location now. And so through the efforts of Good News Brewing Company, modifications have been made. Those modifications relate to the location of certain facilities like the stage, the game area on the east side of the property facing toward the west-southwest and away from established residential areas. Also, there are in the recommended conditions requirements relating to sound dampening curtains as part of the stage. Again, ensuring that the music goes to the clientele of the microbrewery and not elsewhere in the general vicinity. Along with that, there are provisions for paved parking, but also additional overflow parking that can be gravel in nature. The gravel component is important because from the perspective of town center, it's not something normally the city would accommodate, but we do believe the required parking needs to be paved along with the accessible spaces, but those overflow spaces can be gravel in those periods when needed, and they also address our stormwater management concerns. Also, Mr. Deal, the current owner of the business, has not yet had to deal with the Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District relative to stormwater management and making a connection to public sanitary sewer. Those would be conditions of Good News Brewing Company. But again, as I've mentioned, would only be applicable to that microbrewery use and not anything relative to the current activity. In the conditions, the department identifies that there are several others that need to be addressed to ensure the minimal amount of impact on the area the residential component of the area, and generally speaking, the environment of town center. Tonight, the department is recommending favorably for this potential new use as part of this 3-acre property. As a motion, though, the department would respectfully request that if the Planning and Zoning Commission considers it favorably, that as a condition of that favorable action, that there would be a note, a item added that would simply state that the new conditions would only be applicable to the new use, that being the microbrewery and sit-down restaurant. Pardon? I can't hear you without the microphone. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, would you just repeat that, just that one part again?
Again, as I've stated, I believe multiple times, the new conditions would only be applicable to the microbrewery. And if the microbrewery were not to proceed forward, the existing conditions would stay in place unchanged. Thank you.
Director Vunich, so just to make sure I heard that part there, are you asking for an amendment that be added as part of the motion? That if the changes that we are considering tonight will be only applicable to the Good News Brewery, so that this way, if that were to not proceed for whatever reason, everything stays the same.
Exactly. Thank you
Okay.
for probably saying it clearer than I just did.
I think we'll look for how you would recommend we make that amendment when that time comes, that language there.
Yes, what I would ask is the commission just identify that a recommendation to approve the report as presented with the addition of a clear statement that any new conditions, those in the dark red font, would only be applicable and applied if Good News Brewing Company is the owner of property.
Commissioner Helfrich.
Okay, so I'm going to make the motion that we amend this to state that the new regulations only apply to the brewery company, and that if this does not go through, that it reverts back, as you said. And then I have a question, but that's my motion. Oh, and a motion to approve.
Should we first have already speaker cards, just the appropriate time for that, or do we want to?
Mr. Chair, we passed the point on the agenda to accept any
Oh,
public
okay.
comment. Thank you.
I did have a question for Mr. Vunich. You know, as far as hours of operation, I know you've put some notes in there as to when they're allowed to have live music. And I was just curious how those hours of operation compare to what we allow when we have concerts on Main Street.
Well, as you know, our concerts on Main Street start at 6:45 PM and generally end no later than 9 PM. If we have a popular band and the crowd is large, usually there is an encore or two, so it might take us to 10 after 9:10 PM. So we try to maintain a reasonable set of hours for our concerts, but recognizing that although we're in town center and downtown district, we have a whole lot of residences around us. Now, again, we have large bands, amplified music, and to our crowd, sometimes the louder the better. In this case, we've limited the use of the stage to acoustic music. And we've basically set the hours for Friday and Saturday night, 6 PM to 9 PM.
Commissioner Hill.
So if one of the questions I have is in here, it says that they would kind of emulate the Defiance brewery that they have. And on here, their hours are, they have it circled in red, 12 to 10. So that would have to be not that.
Again, just
Correct.
remember the specification for time frame specific is to music and outdoor games. Those things that generate what I would consider compatible noise to the microbrewery, but not necessarily as compatible to a residential area. Otherwise, I don't recall identifying hours of operation any different than what was.
So I guess my question would be, cornhole's a big deal. right now. And so if they had this microbrewery and they decided to have cornhole set up outside, would they have to stop by a certain time?
Could you repeat that again? I apologize. I was looking to
So-
make sure my statement relative to the hours of operation was correct and not incorrect. So
Okay, so
apologies.
that's my question is about the hours of operation. So if they're gonna have outside microbrewery, they have outside stuff like, for example, cornhole, yes. And that's fun, unless you're losing, which I do. So would those outdoor activities have to be ended by a certain time?
No later than 9 PM.
Okay, but the brewery could stay open later.
It could stay open to that 10, 11 o'clock timeframe that they've established themselves.
Okay, and then my next question is, all of the access points would still be on and off of this West Avenue, correct?
Yes, there's a prohibition on Manchester Road, primarily due to site distance. And then obviously they don't have access to New College Avenue at this time.
So, but they're considering that, because I was gonna say, on here, it also states that they are considering possibly purchasing other properties, so that might be the way they would go, which would be advisable, because it's businesses back there, right?
Very much so. And in conversations with the representative of Good News Brewing Company, we've encouraged them to consider purchases of additional property in the future if warranted to the west. That would
Yeah.
coincide with Rockwood Bank and
Yeah.
access there to New College Avenue.
Okay, so that's all the questions I have, and I made a motion to accept the recommendation with the amendment.
The hours have not been established, correct?
Only for those outdoor game
Game.
activities and the music.
So the, like Larry's, which was just up the road, they could have the same hours as Larry's restaurant.
Larry's as local, as the local house bistro, as El Maguey, as Benedetto's, generally speaking, we try to keep a level playing field for the
Right.
businesses. Now, Mr. Tripp, the representative of Good News Brewing Company, made it quite clear 10 o'clock is pretty much when they close, because I think anything that happens after that, generally speaking, probably isn't in a positive direction.
Yeah. Nothing
And
good.
usually it's probably true after you've had enough beers, people, so.
Commissioner Jackson.
Yeah, my only question, and I think it may have been addressed, is the end of outdoor games and lighting and et cetera. Will that be at like 10 o'clock? I know that like Larry's, for example, I think is open till like 1 in the morning. Is there rules on that part? That would be the only question. It seems like we're all in favor of this, just reading the room. I just make sure any lighting, any outdoor games while people are driving by, there's got to be an end time for that at some point, my opinion. That's my only question.
Well, from the perspective of the music and outdoor game activities, 9 PM is the latest, and it's limited, in this case, the music to Friday and Saturday only. The outdoor games can be anytime the business is open during the week, but again, still 9 PM is the cutoff. Our outdoor lighting requirements establish 10:30 PM as, for the most part, all lights not necessary for security to be off.
Thank you, Joe. I just missed that. I'm good.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you brought up the topic of noise. And so from what I'm hearing tonight, it does seem like a reasonable compromise, the 9 o'clock deadline for any kind of outdoor activities. Polling the residents that are over there, that was probably the main concern around there, was just noise and how late it would be and how far the noise can travel. So I'm very pleased to see that you addressed the direction of the acoustic stage area to be away from the residences that are directly to the east of that location and also to the south of it. You've got the Stone Mill neighborhood, Old Town Park residences that are over on Center Avenue. So having the stage point in the other direction, I think will address that. And as well as I heard that there's going to be some kind of requirement on the three sides of the stage so that it protects noise from traveling towards the residences. But the 9 o'clock, I would think, is a reasonable hour to end those kind of outdoor activities so that the business can still continue to operate, just like there are other businesses that you mentioned past 9, but just outdoors, because there are people that live in that area there. So we need to accommodate that.
Again, just to be clear, the intent is not to deter the business. It's just recognizing that it's not downtown district. And even when we have, I remember several of the businesses in Building D next to the hotel, they used to have music. It was fairly loud, and we would get complaints from the 7 villages at Cherry Hills, et cetera. So what we're trying to do here is direct the sound to an area that's commercial, where also sound is generated from Wildwood Pub and Grill with their music. So obviously we'll try to cancel those 2 out, and Route 109 as a part of that. And then just the sound curtains, the dampening. And then finally, we also did an extra 25 feet of setback for the stage itself. So it's being 75 feet versus 50.
We ready for a roll call vote?
Commissioner Helfrey,
Yes.
Commissioner Rubus,
Yes.
Commissioner Clayton,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Beatty.
Yes.
Commissioner Beatty votes yes. Vice Chair Cohn,
Yes.
Councilmember Brost,
Yes.
and Mayor Garitano. Thank you.
And again, with the permission of the chair, the owner of West County Feed and Supply was obviously concerned. So I just want to restate, we have recommended an additional use in conjunction with the current site. The existing use can stay, and any new condition that is part of the action of the Planning and Zoning Commission would only be applicable and applied if the transfer of property from Mr. Deal to Good News Brewing Company would occur.
Mr. Newberry, we ready for PZ 118 dash?
That was the item we just covered. I'll go to the next item. Under other, a request of the Planning and Zoning Commission from the Department of Planning to authorize a work session on the proposed changes to the City of Wildwood subdivision and development regulations, which have been under review, all wards.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the department would like to ask the commission to consider a work session on our subdivision and development regulations. Typically, the department would think, oh, we could do that without any assistance and just present to you. But I think Mr. Young, Mr. Newberry, Ms. Ripito, and I would like to have an opportunity to explain a couple of areas particularly to you. And that is our escrow process, particularly when we collect escrows in the large lot area. In instances of late, we've been holding escrows for 10 to 15 to 20 years because they're large lot, single family subdivisions. Multiple lots are part of the subdivision. They're custom homes. And what we're finding between the Great Recession, COVID, and rising interest rates, things can stay in place for a long time, and the owners of those subdivisions carry those escrows for years and years and years. So we'd like to talk about that. It would be a major change in the opinion of the department. We'd also like to talk about trust indentures. We have a very limited number of regulations relating to trust indentures in our subdivision and development regulations. And oftentimes we get requests that the department believe are reasonable that we can do nothing about because we have no authority relative to what is in place. And so I'd at least like to explore that with the commission members and our city attorney. And then finally, we have through our watershed erosion task force come up with, I think, some very good ideas for stormwater management. I'd like to at least offer to you an opportunity to consider adding some of those good ideas into the subdivision and development regulations. And those would be specific to requiring stormwater features even for a single family dwelling on a large lot in our rural areas. We used to think they didn't create a problem. What we're finding out is, given our current weather conditions and patterns, almost any rainfall now seems to create an issue downstream with somebody. So we're thinking about trying to address that. And then also, this would be a golden opportunity to kind of go over the new fee structure that has been ultimately endorsed by our city council, not yet employed, but certainly you would all be able to hear what we're thinking in terms of new fees, some of which have not been raised since 1995. We're inflation fighters here. So I don't have a particular date. What Mr. Newberry, Ms. Ripito, and I would like to do is send you a list of potential Monday nights. We'd start at 6. I promise it would be no more than 90 minutes. And we'd have that information to you at least a week in advance so you could have an opportunity to review it thoroughly. And so with commissions on the first Monday and city council on the second, we were thinking either the third or fourth Monday in June. We can't do the third one in June. We have a Historic Preservation Commission meeting. So maybe the third or fourth meeting in July or August. So we'll send you some dates and see what you think if this request for work session is approved. Thank you. And if there are any questions.
Any questions? Motion to,
Mr. Jackson has.
oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner Jackson.
I make a motion to approve. Done. Sorry.
Do we have-
I do that.
Anybody else? Okay. Will your second?
Second.
Okay. All right. I guess will you have a voice vote on this?
Yes, sir.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any what? You have a question
Yeah.
while we're voting?
Nope, afterwards.
Okay. All right. Any abstentions? Okay. Commissioner Helfrey has a question.
Yes, so Mr. Vunich, I have two things. One is the R&D stuff that went through us and also went through the city council. I wondered if there is a way that we could, I would like to request that we do something to address that potential for R&D down in the industrial district. If that's possible or not, or to say no finally one way or another. Because I think what the city council said was that, and in agreement with us, was that non-urban wasn't the place for it.
Well, very good question and a couple of points. First, the Planning and Parks Committee of City Council considered the issue of research and development in the rural areas, primarily the non-urban resident district, at its last meeting in May, and is recommending no change to the non-urban residence district. That recommendation will be at City Council this coming Monday, June 10th. Secondly, just so happens that the M1 Industrial District has, as part of it, no, I thought it did. Yes, under permitted uses, permitted land uses and developments, number 14, research laboratories and facilities already. So
Do those have to be defined though, as to what kind?
probably because not all of our land uses under the permitted and conditional list are defined. Typically, we just defer to what is normally associated with that type of use, whether it be from a dictionary or some other source. But certainly we could do that. And if that's a motion, we can make that part of our one of our future meetings as a public hearing item.
Okay, and the other thing I wanted to ask was, what is the regulation on commercial trash areas with the doors? Are they supposed to be open to the public? Are they supposed to be concealed? Because every single time that I drive by Walgreens, without fail, their doors are open. When I ate at Benedetto's, they were open. When I drive by with my Starbucks, they're open. And so I want to know, what are the regulations for the trash areas? And that's all I have. Thank you.
The regulations are that the doors for the enclosure should be closed so that the trash dumpsters are not visible. Walgreens is one of those exceptions that, for all intents and purposes, the departments kind of turn the other eye, because the doors probably weigh 200 or 250 pounds. I mean, they are massive, they're heavy, and to have an employee of Walgreens try to manage those when they're not closed by the waste hauler just seemed unreasonable. We can track down who provides waste hauling services to Walgreens and give them a call and say, you're paying that individual that drives the truck that does the pickup to do a job, and that part of the job is closing the doors behind it. So we'll see what we can come up with.
Pay the extra. Yeah,
And that's a very good point, because
It's
as
empty
Mr.
now.
Lee will tell you, Tom Lee, our city administrator, the owner of that building and their broker is doing yeoman's work to try to find somebody to take that space. And maybe that's part of the reason. I don't know.
Well,
So
Benedetto's Foods was so good that I could overlook it, right? But thank you.
Just like to add that it's been my experience with numerous waste haulers that they always have been required to open and close the dumpster enclosures. I mean, why have the doors there in the first place? And there's never been an additional charge. Granted, the driver has to get out, get off his seat, but they don't charge extra for that. You just need to.
we have this problem at City Hall. I'll drive in some mornings and the dumpsters aren't fully set back into the enclosure area, so you can't close the doors, and the driver's long gone. You usually make a contact and have somebody come out from the company and fix it, but yeah, it's like a lot of things. The chain's only as strong as its weakest link.
Joe, you mentioned
you.
the weight of the doors at Walgreens. Do they have like an internal access to it to where they can throw stuff away without opening the doors?
Yes, but mine more, Mr. Chair, was if they're open and in violation and I call down to Walgreens, it just doesn't seem like a reasonable request. I mean, I wouldn't want to wrestle with them, so I sometimes have a difficult time asking someone else.
Yeah,
Obviously, the waste
that's
hauler.
fair. I just asked because if they're closed, if they're closed and didn't have internal access, someone would have to open them to throw anything away. So that was why I asked.
There's a man door that comes out of that side of the building so they can access the dumpsters themselves.
Okay. All right. I totally understand what you're saying now.
Any further questions or comment? I've got nothing. Go ahead. We have a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
We have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting's closed.
Thanks, everyone. I'll try to be in person next month.